In our country, and this is something I've learned recently, we're one of very few countries who actually provide the social service network within our school system. Most other countries in their education budgets do not include breakfast and lunch for students in those budgets. They don't include things like psychology services and social worker services and many of those kinds of programs, guidance services that we include in our education budget. A lot of other countries will include that outside of the education budget, so that the education budget is truly just focusing on education. And I bring that up because as we start hearing a lot more about comparing how our country is doing in comparison to other countries, you'll often hear people say, well, we spend more on education than other countries, and that's simply not true. What other countries do is they segregate out of the education budget all of those social service programs that are in our budgets, and so therefore you're not really comparing apples to apples. So
and truthfully, the other thing is that it's usually the brightest and the as they test them more intelligent, and those in the upper crust usually that are the ones who are part of the school system in a lot of other countries too as well.
Yeah, what they do is they'll track students, so by the time they get to high school, for example, in a lot of other countries they have students who go on to college-ready schools and students who go more into the trades, and we don't do that in our country. We prepare everyone for college, and we have more students going to college now than we ever had before, but people often kind of misconstrue some of those facts. You know, the other thing is a study was done using many countries, 30 industrialized countries, and out of those 30 industrialized countries, the U.S. is one of 4 where poverty plays such a huge role in our education system. And so, you know, that's another factor that we in the United States have to deal with when we're educating our youth. And you know, one thing I will tell you about all of these other countries that people often compare us to, Finland, Singapore, where they have these high test scores, both of those countries and several others treat their teachers with incredible respect. In Finland, for example, the #1 career choice for women and the #3 career choice for men is teaching. And in Singapore, it is the highest paid profession. So, you know, there's just a totally different take on how they treat and respect teachers. And both of those countries put a lot of emphasis on training teachers before they even get into the classroom in a very systematic way, so that when they start teaching, they are ready to hit the ground running. And unfortunately, in our country, we don't always invest that much in college education, and so and the types of education programs we have. So we're not always doing the best we can to prepare teachers for the classroom. And interestingly, in Singapore, if you're going into teaching, you don't pay a dime for your college education all the way through.
And wouldn't it be great if we actually felt that way about our teachers, really valued them in such a regard? And in truth, you know, years ago when I was growing up, teachers were valued. I won't say they were paid that much, but there was a higher level of respect for them. You wouldn't find students, I mean, they wouldn't dare speak back to their teacher. And if they did, and they ended up getting the paddle or some of those other straps like I used to get. Yeah, I'll confess. But you know, the thing was back then, if they beat you and they knew your parents, they would tell your parents, and your parents would also beat you. So there was no disrespect that went on in terms of talking back to teachers or mistreating teachers. I got paddled because I didn't know an answer or something like that. But praise God, I still got beat when I got home. No, that didn't matter. But there was that higher level, I think, in terms of how we valued the teachers then, and it would be great to see that now, not just in terms of that manner, a level of respect, but also in terms of the pay that we provide them also.
Well, let me say something on that, because you hit on a good point and something that's been very concerning to us, and I hear it every day from teachers. Our teachers are struggling right now, and you know, we're essentially banishing them to poverty without even thinking about it. You know, our teachers are in our community, they live in our community, they go to our churches and our synagogues, we see them in Publix, you know, they're everywhere. They have spouses who are out of work or who are underemployed right now, or their hours have been cut and they're struggling to make ends meet. You know, a lot of teachers call, and they call, you know, us for advice and suggestions on what they can do, but they're proud people. They're embarrassed by the condition they're finding themselves in because they can't make ends meet anymore. They can't afford their mortgage. They can't afford to provide health care for their kids. One teacher recently contacted us. Her husband's been out of work for a year. She has 3 kids. She is now the sole provider because until her husband can find work, and has been struggling to find work on a consistent basis. And because of laws that were passed by Tallahassee, this teacher is going to lose $200 a month this coming school year, starting now. And she doesn't know what to do. She can't make ends meet now. And so what is she supposed to do? How is she supposed to survive? And that's what we're hearing over and over and over again. Teachers are struggling, and no one seems to be concerned about it. We're very concerned about it, and I think the general public needs to understand that, you know, our teachers go above and beyond every day for the students, and they put aside, you know, their own struggles to make sure that our students succeed. And it's getting to the point where I don't think we're going to keep a lot of our teachers because they're in a situation now where really they cannot make ends meet, and you know, teachers are not overpaid by any stretch of the imagination. Volusia County teachers rank in the bottom half of pay in the state of Florida. Florida's teachers rank, it's anticipated they'll rank 49th this year in pay in the nation out of 50 states. We're not paying our teachers well at all in the state of Florida, and we're continuing to ask so much of them. And our teachers have stepped up. You know, Florida last year got a report card in the state in which Florida, compared to the nation, was one of the 5th best education systems, or was the 5th best education system in the nation. And the only 2 areas we were marked down was supporting teachers and funding for our schools. We got an F in funding for schools, and we got a C- in supporting our teachers. We're not supporting our teachers, and quite honestly, we're not supporting our schools. And if it weren't for the dedicated individuals every day in our school system, teachers and support staff and administrators going in every day, our schools would not be successful at all. And what are we doing as a community to support them? To me, this is an issue of humanity. This is an issue of our community. What are we going to do? What are we saying as a community if we're turning our backs on the people who are there for our kids every day? You will not get a better education than you can get in the public school system, hands down. And people are talking about charter schools and private schools as the solution, but when the data comes out every year, our charter schools are among the worst performing schools. We don't evaluate private schools in most cases, and so, you know, it's hard to know what they're doing. But in states where they do, private schools do no better than the public schools. And the ones that do are typically the ones that cost, you know, $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 a year. So, you know, it is an issue of what are we doing for our community, and how are we investing in our community. And, you know, we've got to have a serious conversation, and we have got to stop this blaming the teacher, this bashing the teacher that is going on as the sole problem in our public schools, or in society, quite honestly. What you're hearing out of Washington, quite honestly from both parties now, what you hear from Tallahassee is trying to come up with quick fixes to complicated issues, and the quick solution is blame the teacher. Blame the teacher. I gave you Gwen, and we'll figure out a way we can get this out, but I actually have it on my Facebook page now too, but the Florida Department of Education released how they're going to evaluate teachers, and it is the most complex formula I have ever seen. I do not understand it. I've asked several mathematicians to look at it and try to give us a story on it. There's actually a book that's probably a couple of 100 pages thick that explains all of this, but this is how they're going to evaluate teachers. And if it's not something simple that we can understand, which it isn't, then who's going to trust it? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. You know, let's talk about doing things in a fair and equitable way. Do we need to change what we're doing in our schools? Absolutely. Are teachers changing what we're doing every day? Absolutely. Are we getting credit for it? No. We're getting blamed, we're getting our hands tied, we're getting things forced down our throat as to what we should be doing in our schools. And there is no public outcry. And what's happening, and what's sad to me, is what people are doing is they're choosing to leave the public schools instead of staying and helping build the public schools. They're tired of the attacks themselves. People leave the public schools to get out of FCAT testing, to get out of all of the stuff that's going on, that's being done to our students, that's not good for teaching. It's not good for learning. It's not good for the success of our students. but this is what we're being forced to do. And instead of parents and the community saying this is not